Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, the Great Pumpkin's going to get here any time now. Any minute now. It's just about to happen. I can feel it. Almost. I thought for sure leaving my house and being completely out of touch with the world for 30 minutes was going to be what triggered the Big Ten to finally make what we have been promised was a early afternoon announcement. And here we are in mid to late afternoon, still awaiting an announcement. So,
But other than that, a completely productive day on both of our accounts, I assume. I did see, and welcome to everybody who is joining us and will join us. Heather Dinich tweeted at 3:12 p.m. that the Big Ten decision is still expected today, but it's taking longer than expected because of the legality involved in the process and documents. So I don't know. I don't know what today means. If that's end of business, if that's end of today, like 11:58, and of course, being Big Ten being in Chicago, they have a false time zone situation there as well. So you'd add another hour onto that. Who knows when this is going to happen? At this point, Tom, I would just prefer let's just hold off until Monday. Let's just take the weekend and do football, and then get back into the office on Monday and hash this thing out.
yeah, and there was a lot of griping about. Sorry, I'm looking at my phone, which I've spent literally the entire day doing. Just reflexively refreshing, like, hey, anything new? No, all right. Yeah, I mean, as you said, the tweet from Heather Dinich, the Big Ten decision expected today. I mean, there's been a lot of griping about, how dare you make Jim Harbaugh get on an airplane without knowing what the. I mean, when exactly, after this season is not an acceptable answer to this question. When exactly would you like this punishment released? Because if it had been released on Thursday, it would have been, well, we sent you 20 pages of documents, much of which we wrote on our own, and then you didn't take enough time to review it, so obviously you didn't take this seriously enough, so that too soon. And then if it's Friday, it's like, well, he's about to get on an airplane, you can't do this on Friday. And if they wait till Monday, it's going to be, how they had one of the biggest games of the year, how could you make them wait in limbo over the weekend? This is total. I mean, there is no time where there will not be a complaint about when this got released. So when this gets released in terms of, you know, it's not fair. Like, it's going to get released at some point. Like, you should have timed your scandal better. I don't know what to tell you. Like, that is just the reality of the situation. You want the Big Ten to be meticulous on this. You want the
Mm-hmm.
Big Ten to be thorough on this. If Michigan slapped their response on the table, having taken basically the full 48 hours, it's worth noting if we're worried about how late in the week this got. When Michigan slapped their thing on the table, the Big Ten came back 5 minutes later and said, "Here's the punishment." I don't think that would have gone over well. You want the Big Ten to consider the legal arguments that are being made, and then make a thoughtful response and a levying of whatever punishment there is or isn't. That seems like, for such big fans of due process, it feels like odd to be like, well, hurry up. Like, I know why we're saying hurry up, but it doesn't really seem like that's consistent with the newfound love of due process.
Yeah, what is the proper time frame? And if it's next week, then all you're now you're just letting this drag out, and you're letting everybody just float in the wind. We need something now, but not so soon. But then you're also seeing you can't punish the players, you can't punish the coaches, you can't punish. Like I don't know who is supposed to be punished in this thing that the Big Ten believes Michigan did wrong. Like, how do you punish somebody and punish nobody and make everybody feel good about it? And it's not going to happen. I saw Desmond Howard this morning talking about how the SEC would never do this to Nick Saban, and I was wondering, when did Jim Harbaugh become in the same get into the same conversation as Nick Saban, and what an entity would or wouldn't do to protect him? Because last time I looked, there's Nick Saban there's everybody else. There's a bunch more people, and then there's Jim Harbaugh. And Jimbo Fisher has a national championship. Jim Harbaugh is waiting for his first. So, like, there are levels to these coaches, and I don't even know, Tom, at this point, how many car dealerships Jim Harbaugh has. If it's none, then I don't even know what he's doing in this discussion.
Yeah, if you missed it, Nick Saban and his, I don't know, business group bought two, I think, Mercedes-Benz dealerships for like $300 million earlier in the week. So Nick Saban's doing just fine. The idea that Michigan is going to go to the SEC, which is somewhat related to the SEC would never do this to Nick Saban. You have seen that floated from people who are not like 13 follower egg avatar Twitter people, like actual people who are, have some kind of a following and talk to occasionally people who are affiliated with the university. The idea that Michigan is going to get so big mad over whatever happens here that they're going to go to the SEC is quite literally the dumbest thing I have ever heard in my entire life. That is a decision that gets made at the university president level. And I know Santa Ono wrote a big mad letter on last Thursday or Friday or whatever that then came out 3 days later and everyone misinterpreted the timing of. They are not leaving for the SEC. No university in the entire nation, outside of maybe the Ivy League, has spent more of the last 30 years hotboxing its own farts and sniffing them gloriously than the University of Michigan. They cannot wait to tell you how they are the Harvard of the West, and as James Earl Jones intones in the pregame video that they play, this is the greatest university in the world. You think they want to be in a conference with Mississippi State? Are you kidding me? Are you nuts? Like, if you are a parent and your children have reached the age of 3, you recognize this behavior. They are throwing themselves on the ground and throwing a big old temper tantrum because they are so mad, and they're going to show you, and they're going to kick, and they're going to punch, and they're going to be so mad. When I was a kid, my younger brother would get mad and threaten to run away from home, and then he would go hide under the dining room table. And then we would all pretend, oh, where is he? Where could he be? Man, he really did it this time. That's this. Michigan's going to run away from home. They're going to go hide under the Big Ten's dining room table. Because this is a university that fancies itself to be one of the elite, and is a very highly regarded university nationally, one of the top public universities in the country. Take 12 seconds to scroll through the U.S. News and World Report list of top public universities and tell me which neighborhood Michigan wants to be living in. Let alone the fact that, hey, the South is pretty far away, but also what neighborhood do you want to be in? The one that's adding UCLA and USC and already has a bunch of the top public universities, or do you want to be in a league with Mississippi State and LSU? And I mean, like, come on. That's setting aside, of course, Tony, the fact that the TV deal doesn't expire till 2030. And I think the temper tantrum, I don't know how long this temper tantrum is going to last, but I've never seen one last 6.5 years. So if you're going to leave before 2030, you're going to lose all your TV money, which I'm sure they would love to do. Leave that all behind. And in addition to all the other reasons I previously listed, like literally the stupidest idea I have ever heard in my life.
Yeah, and you have for many, many years and decades, we've heard about how Michigan is more than just football. And then this would be an entirely football decision. You're just going to pick up and leave and find new research partners and all kinds of things like that. So, no, that is not going to happen. Anybody who says that in terms of suggesting that is being childish, childlike, more childish than childlike, because not all children are childish.
Question from Jordan Kapler. If you were Tony Petitti, Big Ten Commissioner, what penalties or sanctions would you bring down on the true culprit of all of this? Kevin Noon.
Well, I think you have to, obviously, there's a suspension going on. You vacate all of his wins from the past as well. Anytime Kevin has won, vacate that, take that, strike from the record. You need a show cause. Kevin needs a show cause for any time he wants to come back onto the show, I think. And I'm not sure that he's got enough enough guff there to prove his worth in terms of having showing the cause, if you will.
Yeah, a literal show cause that he must have cause to appear on the show. Yes, I like that. Texas are busted. Boy, everyone has been wearing out their F5 keys
Mm.
today. That is, it has been a day of just people looking at their screens and just hitting the refresh button over and over and over and over again, waiting. I have not seen this. Have you seen? Jason said that Greg Doyle has a CBS from CBS has a story that the NCAA investigation has been expedited and due to be finished this fall. I'm going to guess, without having seen that, I'm going to guess that that would be the investigation. It must be the investigation into the previous stuff, the stuff that he sat 3 games for at the beginning of the season, because under the NCAA's bylaws, the new investigation into the whole Connor Stallions situation, they have to issue a notice of allegations to Michigan, which don't believe they have done, the NCAA, and then Michigan gets 90 days. So there's no way that that one could be expedited and be done this fall. That's not realistic. It's possible that the other one could be the previous one, but that's it's not possible for them to. I mean, we know what fans of due process and procedure Michigan lawyers are, so I don't think they're going to be able to do that. Super chat from Mike Smith, which I need to find here. This is Kevin absolutely killing me by not being here. Super chat from Mike Smith. Can someone answer me a question I can't get an answer to? If Michigan has this dossier with 20 years of dirt on Ohio State and the rest of the Big Ten, why hold on to it now? Why not turn it in when they were average?
Tom, that's an interesting question. I've already asked why didn't they turn it in when they were getting as part of their defense for all of this? Why hold back? If you're holding stuff back on people rather than turning them in real time, you're holding it back in case somebody ever gets something on you, I guess. And then now we can fight fire with fire, which then implies that you're doing things you shouldn't be doing. And hey, if we get caught for this, then we've got some ammo to go after others for and with. So I don't understand holding that back. And if you really want to just because Jim Harbaugh has hold on people, he has like complained to the conference before and confronted people before and did it in the Pac-12. Rick Neuheisel talked about it when they were back when Jim Harbaugh was at Stanford. Rick Neuheisel was either UCLA or Washington, probably UCLA. And they had one of their coaches' calls, and Jim Harbaugh confronted him like over the call about something or other. And then he had another complaint about the number of refs that were going to get USC practices, and it was more than they were going to Stanford's practices, and that was giving USC an unfair advantage, to which Pete Carroll had to break in and say, Jim, we're the most penalized program in the Pac-12, they're Pac-10 at that point. There is no advantage in having them over. So, we obviously know the backstory of the complaining about Ohio State having a illegal coaching back in 2020. So they've thrown out accusations before, but holding on to stuff like this, it is interesting for a rainy day fun type of thing. But I'm saying if you are fighting for your life, and it sure seems like that's a little bit of what Michigan has been doing, you're not going to hold this stuff until after the fact. You're like, okay, if you hand us something down that we don't like, then we are really going to give you some information that you would like about everybody else. And it's like, well, give it to us now. Don't hold on. Give it to us now. We'll take it. We'll do what we can with it. We would appreciate your help. We thank you. If you see something, say something, that sort of thing. Please give us all of your manila folders, and we will look into it.
Speaking of things that we're going to be looking into, Tony, tweet from Pete Thamel. Thank you to the folks in the chat for bringing this to our attention. Tony, we have some actual, honest to goodness, breaking news. I'm going to have to change the podcast alert level to red because this feels significant. From Pete Thamel, sources: the Big Ten is expected to discipline Michigan for the in-person scouting. Pete needs an editor. An ongoing sign-stealing investigation, and will prohibit Jim Harbaugh from being on the sideline until the conclusion of the regular season. He will be allowed to coach during the week. So that from Pete Thamel of ESPN. That the idea of just a fine got floated on Wednesday night. the idea of a 3-game suspension, which would align with this, got floated earlier in the day. I mean, I guess I have always thought that the just during the game suspension is not really that much of a suspension for a head coach. That's, I mean, and this is not me saying like insufficient penalty. This is just me saying like in general that never strikes me as a particularly like egregious penalty to get dumped on you, because most of your coaching gets done during the week. During the game, I mean, you're managing the clock and that kind of stuff. You have offensive coordinators, you get defensive coordinators. You're making some high level decisions, but they just spent 3 games doing this. So I don't, this is going to get, pounded as like this is the most draconian thing ever that the Big Ten has ever done. I mean, whatever. I have reached the point where people were yelling and screaming about a fine only on Thursday night. It was like, yeah, I mean, whatever. If that's what they feel the evidence means, then that's what the evidence means. This feels like, okay, yeah, this is not like wildly out of line with what I was thinking they might get.
It is beyond the 2 games. It would be beyond the 2 games that we've talked about that Tony Petitti can hand down, which once we saw Michigan getting their elbows out and getting ready to fight back with all of the letters and the media throng from the Michigan side in terms of getting out what they wanted, we kind of figured it felt like more than 2 games at that point. Whether or not this is harsh enough or not, we know that Michigan has gone 3-0 this season already when Jim Harbaugh wasn't on the sidelines. Now, that was non-conference, very easy opponents to face. Obviously, Penn State, Maryland, and Ohio State would be much different. But I'm with you. And we talked to Ryan Day, and they talk about how all of the work gets done during the week. That's when all of the play calling is essentially done during the week, things like that. The game planning. And so a head coach is making 4th down decisions, no, let's go for it. No, let's punt. Let's, things like that. The coordinators are making the call. I feel like and I've been saying, I think most of the day and maybe before that, like a more powerful or perhaps a more strict punishment would have been, I think, the coordinators being suspended for 3 games, because then you have to scramble a little bit and figure out how you're going to handle this. They've already been without Jim Harbaugh. They know how to handle that. So this to me is it's not earth shattering. And the interesting part to me is that it goes beyond the 2 games. And so this is going to create a fight. What is Michigan's response? The injunction, that whole thing, their legal response. What does that entail, and how quickly does that get filed? How quickly does this all get processed? And is he on the sideline tomorrow while they wait for a judge of some sort, and then all of that legal stuff? How quickly can that be done?
Well, I would assume that they have basically. I would assume that the attorneys for Michigan and or Jim Harbaugh and or both have basically been in the same 3-point stance that you and I have been in all day long, waiting for the shoe to wait for the gun to go off, and then boom, you're out of the blocks and you're going. If someone was like sitting in the cafeteria of the whatever courthouse they're going to file this in all day long, that would not surprise me at all. It is just, I am expecting to see news of some kind of an injunction filed within the next 15 to 30 minutes. And then, after that, it's a little bit up in the air, because Pete Thamel did reporting earlier in the day where he talked to a retired Chief Justice from the courthouse where, he thought this might get filed. And that was in the Washtenaw County Court, Circuit Court in Ann Arbor. So, and he talked to a retired Chief Justice from there and sort of walked through, what this would all be, what this might all look like, and, the arguments that Michigan might lay out and the arguments that the Big Ten might lay out, and, where this might all kind of end up. And I posted that. I thought that was very interesting. And then Ross Fulton, who is our X's and O's guru on BuckeyeHuddle.com, but who is also a lawyer by profession, said he thought this is, that was kind of all maybe irrelevant because this is all going to end up in federal court anyway. And I don't know if that's end up in federal court immediately, like it would have to go in federal court, or it would start in, some kind of a local circuit court and then get bumped to, the Big Ten would take it to a federal court ultimately. I can't imagine. I mean, the courthouse is, I think, closed today because of the Veterans Day holiday. I believe I saw that. So then the question is, you can always find a judge, right? You can get anyone who's watched any Law and Order, Tony, knows you can find a judge in the middle of the night, on the weekend, whatever. They hate to be interrupted on the golf course, Tony, but you can always find a judge. So, they go find a judge. You presumably present your emergency injunction to them. And then the question is, does it get granted? If it gets granted, I assume then that probably means I doubt they're going to have an emergency hearing on a Friday night. I mean, it's 3:41 p.m. Eastern right now. I doubt you could get people together for that kind of a hearing on a Friday. So I would assume an emergency injunction means he's probably coaching against Penn State, assuming the emergency injunction is granted. But this is me stacking many assumptions very tall, and I'm not sure how much that stack is teetering.
Back to the Greg Doyle thing, that may have been a confusion there. Dennis Dodd wrote something 28 minutes ago saying that a source tells CBS Sports that they're putting the sign stealing investigation on a very fast timeline by the NCAA. So there is 5-6 more weeks in the fall. So I don't know how that's all going to work, because you get the notice of allegations, then Michigan has like 90 days to respond, and then the NCAA has like 60 days to deal with that response. So I don't know how you smash all of that together, but maybe the investigation is what is being sped up, and I don't know how much you can speed up the response time that you have put in the rule books.
Right. You're not going to, if it is like laid out there that this is 90 days, I can't imagine the NCAA is going to try and expedite that and leave themselves open to more litigation potentially. I mean, you're going to probably see a lot of the same arguments that the Michigan folks made against the Big Ten case if you try and do that. And, the reason that the Big Ten is acting right now is because the NCAA can't act by rule. So I'm sure that the case from the NCAA will get fast tracked. It certainly means that, but and as Mike Farino says, presumably they just mean the time to the notice of allegations. That you could get fast tracked to the point where you have a notice of allegations this fall. Sure, I could potentially buy that. But then you got to wait the 90 days. So that's, there just isn't a way to, have the NCAA, write in and solve the problem for everyone this fall. That's just not a realistic timeline based on the bylaws that the NCAA has. So that's why the Big Ten is stepping in and doing this sort of, intermediate thing. And I think there is maybe some confusion that I think I saw someone earlier saying that's it. And this is not necessarily it, because there's a whole separate thing. There's a whole separate. Hang on. All right, Kevin, wave at me when you're ready to jump on. Oh, Kevin's ready to jump on. All right, sorry. Hi, there's Kevin. Hi, Kevin. Kevin, we were just talking about the fact that I think there's some people confused about the fact that this from the Big Ten, which is not official yet, but Pete Thamel reporting that it's going to be a remainder of the regular season, next 3 games kind of situation, where Jim Harbaugh would be suspended just for the games, not for the week. I think there's some confusion that that's separate from whatever is going to happen with the COVID visitation issues that Michigan self-imposed a 3-game suspension for at the beginning of the season. It's also separate from the NCAA investigation into the Connor Stallions, sign stealing, whatever else it ends up being. Those are separate issues. Those are separate things. So, the Big Ten putting 3 games on Jim Harbaugh right now, if that does end up being a correct report, that is not the end of the issue. That does not mean that other coaches, The program might not get probation, might not have wins vacated, might not have show causes, whatever it is. That's a whole separate thing that's still to come. This is just a short-term, temporary, immediate sort of situation.
Yeah, but this shows that they went to the JGEC because it's over 2 games, and this is what they came up with. This is what they came up with. And I understand, and I read a report right before getting on air with you guys that the NC2A is looking to fast track its investigation. What is an NC2A fast track? 12 months, 18 months? I mean, yeah, maybe they could turn something pretty quick. I'm sorry, I'm in a hotel lobby and tiny little tables here. I think that it was a case of trying to make everybody happy and making nobody happy. Does Michigan sit there and think it got away with something and not bother to go for a temporary restraining order or an injunction or anything along those lines? Because I don't know if I want to open up discovery. And this is a case of, okay, well, you can't coach the games, but you can do everything else, which is akin to what happened with, his self-imposed deal over the hamburgers. When Urban Meyer had his suspension, wasn't he out for the entirety? He couldn't be at the facility. I don't know. I mean, we don't have anything official at this point, but it sure feels pretty light to me.
We've got a couple super chats I want to punch up real quick here. Diego asked, chances of roping Ross into one of these to talk about the legal side. I'd love to hear from an attorney about issues like personal jurisdiction. I can ask. Ross is not on our time zone and maybe doing his actual job right now. So I can check into that. He has been sharing some insights on the Huddle board presented by Jeff Ruby Steakhouse at BuckeyeHuddle.com. He has been in that thread quite a bit answering questions. So that is a great place to get insight from Ross, because I'm guessing we will not be able to get him on this show, especially right now. Super chat from Stephen Oglesby. Jim is screaming, "No, no, no, I can't hear you," so it's holding up the process. Now, he is on an airplane right now. The fun question is, so is there Wi-Fi on the airplane? Because, sometimes the Wi-Fi doesn't work. So is this going to be like the, what was it, Has Justine Landed Yet? Whole kerfluffle about 10 years ago where a lady sent a tweet that people decided was extremely offensive, and then by the time she landed in some other continent, it had blown up, and she was like the top trending topic in the world. I'm guessing Jim Harbaugh probably has a better sense that he's, a topic of conversation today.
That MF right there is not real.
That's a separate plane conversation. I'm going to guess that there is Wi-Fi on the plane, and it is also not a very long flight from Ann Arbor to State College. It's probably like a 45-minute, hour-long flight, something like that. So, if anyone wants to throw the tail number in the chat, we can track the plane. We can do a good old-fashioned college football airplane tracking.
I was going to say the other question is there Wi-Fi in Happy Valley in State College?
Sometime
in the chat that maybe the Big Ten just tweeted something, but I don't know. There are a lot of fake things. I'm looking right now.
Okay, well, while you look for that, I'm going to read the super chat from Mike Farino. I really struggle to understand why this was blown up so big by Michigan. 3-game only suspension hardly seems enough to harm relationships with everyone. Now, I guess the question is, did Michigan's rebuttal change what the Big Ten was going to do here? Was the Big Ten going to level a more serious punishment, and then this is sort of dialed back in respect of, hey, here's what they said, and here's what you kind of had a point on this one, but not on this one, and we don't know, because there's been the rumored punishment has been all over the place, from just a fine to suspended indefinitely to suspended for 2 games, suspended for the rest of the regular season, just, fine $5 million, whatever. It has been all over the map. And this feels like kind of right in the middle of what they had talked about. So I'm not like, I look at this and I think exactly what Tony said, which is you obviously had to go to the JGEC, the Joint Group Executive Committee or whatever it is, to get this approved. So obviously this was not just Tony Petitti doing, wagging his finger and doing this on his own. This was a bunch of Big Ten leadership had to approve this as well, because it's a more than 2-game suspension. So from that perspective, it feels substantive. From the perspective of actual on-field impact, I don't think it's huge, but it also means He has now, assuming this goes through and there's no injunction or anything like that, he will have missed literally half of the regular season for in-game suspensions for 2 separate violations, which, I mean, we always have the legacy conversation with players and stuff. If you have 2 separate suspensions and you've missed half of a season for 2 separate suspensions, potentially, if this is where this all, if this is what ends up being the case, that feels like that becomes a little bit of a legacy thing.
It's a lot of a legacy thing. I don't know how many coaches would be able to withstand getting 2 suspensions in a season and not lose their job, let alone have a coach who you're trying to extend, who is also trying to head to the NFL every single year. This is a very damaged relationship that is beyond. But the first paragraph from the Big Ten, they did release a statement. The Big Ten Conference announces violation of sportsmanship policy by University of Michigan football program. The first paragraph in the release says, the Big Ten Conference announced today that the University of Michigan has been found in violation of the Big Ten sportsmanship policy for conducting an impermissible in-person scouting operation over multiple years, resulting in an unfair competitive advantage that compromised the integrity of competition. That's very strong. That's so strong that when you see those words followed by head coach can't be on the sidelines for the next 3 games, you're like, this doesn't seem to follow. But you're saying it's an unfair competitive advantage for years. I don't know, is it 1 game per year that he's being punished here for?
Well, again, this is not the final punishment. No. Yeah, this is, I mean, and I feel like we need to reiterate that, because I have had a couple, I thought that was pretty clear, but apparently there were a couple people that asked me about that who recently, like in the last day, so maybe that hasn't been clear. This is not the final punishment on this. This is just, here's what the Big Ten feels is needed to do now, and then the NCAA will take its time and do more when the NCAA gets a chance to do that. And it sounds like that's being fast-tracked, but that's, fast-track for the NCAA is not immediate. That's going to take a little time. So this to me, as an interim thing, I don't really have an issue with this. I really kind of had figured out that this was going to go wherever it was going to go, and I was going to probably be okay by and large with whatever it was, because there's only so much they can do in the middle of the season. And so, you're not, there were people floating the idea, and sorry for me acting like I can't talk. Here's had to throw together a quick slide with the Big Ten statement so you can all read it. It is the Big Ten Conference, as Tony said, announced today the University of Michigan has been found in violation of Big Ten sportsmanship policy for conducting an impermissible in-person scouting operation over multiple years, resulting in unfair competitive advantage that compromised the integrity of competition. I need to stop doing 2 things at once, is my big takeaway here. Big Ten Conference Agreement 10.0.1 states in part that the Big Ten Conference expects all contests involving a member institution to be conducted without compromise to any fundamental element of sportsmanship. Such fundamental elements include integrity of the competition, civility towards all, and respect, particularly toward opponents and officials. And as penalty imposed on the institution, the university football team must compete without its head football coach for the games remaining in the 2023 regular season, effective immediately. The disciplinary action shall not preclude the university or its football team from having its head football coach attend practices or other football team activities other than the game activities to which it applies. For clarity, the head football coach shall not be present at the game venue on the dates of the games to which this disciplinary action applies. The Big Ten Conference will have no additional comment at this time. So there it is. That is the entirety of the Big Ten's statement on this. I don't know. I look at the options that they had available. This feels okay to me. This feels reasonable to me. I don't think it's going to have an enormous impact, but I think there was sort of an expectation built up that either, the Michigan people had the expectation built up that nothing was going to happen. This was all nonsense. This was all just lies from the lies from the haters, and they were people on the other side who were sure that the Michigan was going to not be allowed to finish playing in this season, and I don't think either of those were realistic. This this is probably a little bit of a split the baby kind of thing. I mean, no? Do you
Uh,
disagree?
I'll let Kevin go real quick. I'm going to say this is a punishment without much of an impact, and I think that's the splitting the baby thing.
Yeah, I mean, again, as I said when I first sat down, if you're going to the JGEC to go over and above, and this is what you come up with, this is completely toothless. I mean, you may as well have just done nothing at this point and just kick the can down the road to the NC2A. I mean, if anything, this is just probably going to galvanize Michigan about with their Michigan against versus everybody, or Michigan versus the rules, or whatever it is that you want to say at that point. If you wanted this suspension to have a little bit to it, then you have to suspend them out for the entire 3 weeks. You know, no game preps, none of that. There was a lot of talk of what about the coordinators? They certainly seem to be involved in talking to Connor Stallions, and if this is about Connor Stallions, and this isn't necessarily about the rumors of footage on servers and other things out there. I mean, people were talking about in the chat that they were talking about it in 97.1, so it's not necessarily a well-guarded secret that there are certainly allegations out there about some items of that nature. It seems like a lot of farting around for no real results.
I want to read a tweet from Jordan Strack, who is a Toledo-based media person, was on TV there, and then also does Mud Hen stuff and hockey stuff. And he's a Michigan fan, and we get along, and I'm not ripping him. I'm just reading this to give you a perspective of a Michigan fan. He's quote tweeting the Pete Thamel tweet from like 10 minutes ago. This is a punishment that makes everyone happy. Right there. I don't think that's true. Jim Harbaugh gets the game plan all week. Coordinators do their thing during the games. Michigan has a chip on their shoulder. Honestly, feels like a win-win. Let's move on. And I think this is it's definitely galvanizing. I'm not sure punishments are supposed to be galvanizing, but this one is. But like I said, it's a punishment with. I think this is Tony Petitti trying to. You don't want to cost one of your teams a playoff shot, but you want to show like, hey, this what you've done is wrong, and so what we're doing right now, suspending Jim Harbaugh. But the thing is, there are still investigations coming. This is not the end of it. This is not Michigan imposing the penalty like they did previously to try to show like, hey, we're sorry about this, even though Jim Harbaugh didn't seem to be sorry about it. So you're trying to get some good thoughts going from the NCAA on the previous thing. And this one is completely different at this point. Now, until we see the notice of allegations and things like that, and Michigan's response to it, because right now Michigan's response hasn't really been, we didn't do it. It's just, hey, we want the NCAA, the dear NCAA, to get involved. And so I don't know that the NCAA will look at this and be like, okay, time served in terms of what else needs to happen. This isn't just going to be a head coach punishment once this is all said and done. This is going to be well beyond that. I mean, the fact that the Big Ten, I don't even know that we need to say alleged anymore, because some different things have been alleged that have not been proven. But when the Big Ten comes out and says you've had a competitive advantage for multiple years, that's a fact. And now we wait for the real punishment. This is just a now thing. This is like, go to the corner. Now we're going to talk about this.
This is throwing your dog like a biscuit before dinner. Like, okay, shh, go eat this. Take 5 minutes. Go eat this, and then when I'm done with my work, then we'll feed you your dinner. This is an amuse-bouche of a penalty, and you know we'll see we'll see where it goes from there. The Ms. Wilson 123, thank you for the super chat. Flaming Elmo gift from the SEC. Thank you for your coverage. The flight number is DAL 8907, which I just pulled that up on Flight Tracker. That plane landed 5 minutes ago in State College, Pennsylvania, coming from Detroit. So yes, that probably is very likely the correct airplane going from the correct airport to the correct airport. So I would say very, very likely, yes, that was the correct tail number. And Michigan should be on the ground now in State College. We'll see what kind of coverage comes out of State College. Kind of wish we were there, because we've done a bunch of team arrival videos. Boy, this would be a consequential one. Bet the interview with Jim Harbaugh from the ground has some interest.
Where is Harbaugh going to watch the game? Chili's or Applebee's? Because he can't be at Beaver Stadium. State College is kind of limited in its options. I would have said Haas's, but I don't think there's a TV there. So, I mean, maybe he gets a 3 for me from, is that Chili's or Applebee's? I don't know.
It will be interesting to see the whoever the acting head coach is talk about this. And no, I can't say anything, but also I don't know how often the assistants do talking for Michigan, but they're gonna have to say something, and it'll be, I can't comment, but I'm just interested to see who that is. Will they go with the most experienced first time, second time interim weekly head coach?
Jerome Moore would be the guy, even though he's certainly in the crosshairs of the Stallion scandal. But I would assume that it would be Moore.
That would be my guess as well, because I think the 3 games he served earlier in the year, it was Minter for 1, Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator, for 1, correct? Yeah, Sharon Moore, the offensive coordinator, after he served his own suspension, then he got to serve as the interim head coach for a game. And then Mike Hart and Jay Harbaugh each got half of a game. That was, I think, UNLV for the 3rd game. So they have had guys serve as head coaches. Obviously, Sharon Moore, the 2nd game was Bowling Green, maybe? So, this will be a little bit higher profile game, higher stakes game, but, they have had guys serve as head coaches before. Super chat from Austin Frank: seems like they just want Michigan to lose a game so they don't have to intervene too heavy-handedly. If they lose, the problem takes care of itself. I mean, I am sure that is a sentiment that has been felt around, would the college football playoff be absolutely devastated if Michigan dumped this game in Happy Valley tomorrow, and then they could kind of go, well, I mean, you didn't play a very good out-of-conference schedule, and you lost a game, and, with the tiebreaker, probably not going to go your way, even if you beat Ohio State. Yeah, I mean, too bad, so sad, but, we'd love to invite you to our playoff, but sorry, we're out of spots.
Yeah, and I think is there a super chat about that very thing about the college football playoff?
Yes,
So we can just tie into that.
From Mike Farino: does the CFP take this into account now that there's an official stance that cheating took place, or with Michigan still eligible, do they not care?
They will not care at this point because they are eligible. However, it is interesting that the Big Ten has said now that Michigan has been operating at a competitive advantage, and that stopped roughly 2 games ago at this point. So I do wonder if there will be some of that. At least now, will they talk? Because they're not even talking about this in the committee. They don't even talk about the Michigan allegations. Now that these are no longer allegations and there's a punishment handed down, I think they will talk about it. But I don't think it's going to change Michigan's eligibility. I do wonder if maybe it would change their thoughts on Michigan because of the advantage. But however, the advantage that they've had is against teams they already had an advantage over. So I don't think it's materially going to change, but I am interested to see what they actually have to say about it, because that's just one of the things we have to find out each week. Hey, are you thinking about this yet? And I think everybody, Big Ten, the committee, the CFP would not be brokenhearted by a Michigan loss. The CFP or Michigan, or the Big Ten rather, sorry, if Michigan were to lose, are they essentially out of it now as long as Penn State wins out then for the Big Ten championship? But as we know, you don't need to win the Big Ten to make the playoffs. However, what you do need is a strong non-conference win, and Michigan wouldn't have that.
Well, Michigan would probably threaten to sue Penn State for beating them or something like that, because we've heard all this saber rattling, and Tom Mars is talking on one side, and then the university has its own representation, and Harbaugh's representation is either posting stuff on blogs or lifting stuff off of blogs. But as for the College Football Playoff Committee, their charter is to pick the 4 best teams to fill the 4 slots in the 4-team playoff here, last year of the 4-team playoff. They certainly could say that with the Big Ten ruling against Michigan, that certainly handicaps their ability to be one of the 4 best teams. But I don't think we're at that point right now. I think that's one of those things that if Michigan is still on the table, if Michigan beats Penn State and gets to XYZ point, then they're going to have to make a determination. But we never really see the CFP get out ahead of things. The CFP always reacts much later. And, and that's been to Ohio State's benefit in 2014 when Ohio State jumped Baylor and TCU because of what happened in that game and everything else. But I don't think that we're necessarily going to see any sort of adjustment in the rankings that are not predicated by actual on-field actions.
All right, super chat from TH just says this really means nothing, and I mean it's more than nothing, but it's not. This is not the absolute bombshell. I mean, we had people talking about Michigan, dropping the hammer, Big Ten dropping the hammer on Michigan, and it's going to happen on Monday. And it's like, I don't think either of those is really accurate. This is a punishment. This is not, and I don't think it's an unreasonable punishment. I don't think it's like an unreasonably light punishment. It's a punishment, but it's not. This is certainly not Michigan getting nuked into the Stone Age. But again, there is potentially, significantly more coming later with the NCAA. Super chat from David Greenshield. First COVID saved Jim Harbaugh, and now the Big Ten commissioner.
Well, the alternative is that the Big Ten didn't have to make any sort of move and could have punted at the point. Again, to Tom's point, this is not the final verdict. This isn't the final boss. This is not any of that. This is like the easiest of many bosses. Like if your character has no skills or whatever, you might lose. But other than that, you sit there and you look back, it's like, God, that guy was easy to push over. I mean, this is very early in the process. I think that we're going to see a couple more graduated steps. But as I've said, if you're going to make the efforts to act, then act. Don't don't come in with this lukewarm milquetoast nothing burger.
So this is Little Mac versus Glass Joe. Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Super chat from Jordan Kapler. So if Harbaugh can't be on the sidelines, can he go to other games? Can Jim be the new Connor Stallions? I mean,
that would be diabolical. And what a just a snub right in the Big Ten's face to go and do that.
Rutgers, Iowa. Listen. Hey, listen. The Fifth Amendment still applies. You can't do unreasonable. Excessive.
He can get banned from baseball. I mean, stuff can happen.
He could get banned from baseball. That's true.
What if he shows up to Ohio State this weekend and is in a baseball glove, has a baseball glove on him?
What if he shows up to court like Judge Judy, sitting in the front row like he did the last time with Judge Judy? Super chat from Bill Evans, $5. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it. If you had a question, I missed it. Sometimes people will put the super chat in and then have a separate question. So if you guys happen to see the question from Bill, let me know. Super chat from Mike Smith. If this is your punishment, UML is going to try and get an injunction ASAP. Why not just do the 2 games that isn't eligible for appeal after this weekend? That would last to the end of the regular season anyway. And I don't think there's a difference there. Again, I am not an attorney, but the verbiage in terms of may not be appealed is the same at the end of the basic punishments that the commissioner can levy and the punishments that the JGET can levy that are more serious. I think that cannot be appealed to the conference is how that is sort of read. So there's not a line there that's like, you can't appeal these, but you could appeal these. The verbiage is the same, so the case against it would be the same regardless. And if you suspended him for 2 games and it was, Maryland and Ohio State, but not Penn State, boy, I don't think Penn State would be big fans of that. So, I'm going to be so interested to see what the response is, because I have not seen anything yet in terms of an injunction filed, correct? Have I missed anything?
I've not, but I'm on hotel Wi-Fi. If I sit there and even look off the screen, it may drop on me. So, no, I don't know.
I did see a tweet from Kyle Rowland, our buddy with the Toledo Blade, saying, "Can we get a welfare check on David Schuster? I'm legitimately worried about this guy's mental health."
David Schuster
was that weird guy that threatened Walt Disney World and a bunch of other stuff.
Dear at Goofy. He was the guy who was tweeting at all the corporations that sponsor College Game Day, I think, or ESPN, telling them he was going to take his kids to Six Flags instead of Disney World if ESPN did
After
not
Home
fire
Depot
Paul
to
Feinbaum. Yeah.
yeah.
Yes. So.
So there are some other statements, I think, from the Big Ten. I just saw Nicole Auerbach. I'm not sure where this is coming from, but tweeted this. It's from a letter from the university or from the Big Ten. The conference is unmoved by the university's attempt to downplay its impermissible conduct by asserting that other conference members may have engaged in sign decoding. As the university readily admits in its response, it does not know the exact methods that it alleges other teams use to decode its own signs. The conference has not received any information that any other member schools engaged in impermissible advanced in-person scouting, let alone a scheme of the size and scale like the one at issue here. The conference is unaware of any active NCAA investigations into impermissible advanced scouting involving other members of the conference. Should the conference become aware of such impermissible conduct, it will take appropriate action. However, the conference vehemently rejects any defense by the university or any other conference member that cheating is acceptable because other teams do it too.
That's how we were going to have a RICO case here.
That's
all right.
That's another heavy.
They slapped them down hard. That's got more teeth in this lame suspension.
And the Big Ten has just in the last 20 minutes or so released some of the correspondence back and forth with Michigan. The correspondence received by a conference from institution dated November 8th, 2023. You have seen that all leaked through Dan Wetzel already. The correspondence from conference to institution dated November 4th. So this is last Saturday. And so I think this is probably essentially a summation of what the conference talked to Michigan about last Friday. This email constitutes a formal notice of the conference's belief that a violation of the Big Ten sportsmanship policy has occurred. Specifically, both the Big Ten Conference and the University of Michigan were informed by NCAA staff on November 2nd that evidence characterized by the NCAA as uncontrovertible evidence exists to demonstrate that a non-coaching football staff member, Connor Stalions, coordinated a scheme by which individuals were directed to attend games of future opponents for scouting purposes in violation of NCAA bylaw 11.6.1, which it prohibits in-person scouting of future opponents. In addition, the individuals engaged in scouting were instructed to make video recordings of signals used by opposing teams, which violates NCAA football playing rules. FR 1-4-11-H, prohibition on recording signals given by an opposing player, coach, or other team personnel, and the conference's football game management manual. These were not isolated or haphazard incidents. The violations were pervasive, systemic, and occurred over multiple years, specifically dating back to at least the 2021 season and continuing through the current season. The staff member purchased strategically located tickets for games involving future opponents. It goes on and on. But they, in addition to information shared with the conference and institution by the NCAA during the aforementioned call on November 2nd, other evidence possessed or viewed by the conference includes a spreadsheet shown to the conference by the NCAA, for which one worksheet included the 2023 schedules of scheduled opponents and potential opponents, included extensive information related to scouting assignments for games, including the names of individuals who would be attending games, the presence of dollar amounts associated with some games, the notes indicating the need to find individuals in certain locales to attend games. Another worksheet within the same spreadsheet file included written descriptions of the opponent's signals. The worksheet is either in possession of or has been shared with the institution's outside counsel for this matter. Data showing ticket purchases by the staff member for games involving future opponents, including at least 4 games in 2021, 13 games in 2022, and 5 games during the first 7 weeks of the 2023 season. Photos and videos from the public domain that show the staff member adjacent to and communicating with coaches during games occurring within the time frame at issue. One photo was taken from Mr. Stalions' since-deleted Instagram account showing him during the October 2nd, 2021 game at Wisconsin, standing shoulder-to-shoulder with then defensive coordinator Mike Macdonald, with Mr. McDonald focused on the field and Mr. Stalions looking intently in the direction of the opposing sideline. Mr. Stalions' caption for the photo read, quote, "Just 2 football guys debating what the best halftime snack on the platter is," close quote. There is also video of Mr. Stalions watching the opposing sideline during the November 26, 2022 game at Ohio State and then gesturing to the Michigan defense in reaction to the signals being provided to the opposing offense. That would be the video from Adam King from Channel 10 in Columbus. There's also video of Mr. Stalions during the December 31st, 2022 game against CCU standing shoulder to shoulder with defensive coordinator Jesse Minter and talking to him while intently watching what was happening on the field and or the TCU sideline. So this is, it goes on and on, but this is Please provide any response by 5 o'clock p.m. On Tuesday, November 7th, 2023, is what they asked them to do. So apparently they got notified on Saturday and were given until Tuesday to formulate a response. So, that's a reasonable amount of time. There were people who were taking the timeline of, how can you have the punishment on Friday, and saying, well, why didn't they just notify him last week? Well, they notified him on Saturday. So they did not notify him on Monday. It came out on Monday that they had notified him on previously.
There's so much in here. We should just all pause for 15 minutes and go read all of this. One of the things
you guys are going to talk for a minute, and I'm going to start making some screenshots and some graphics because how I love to read this stuff.
You got me 5 more minutes, and then it's time to jump in an Uber and go drink some beer. So,
all right. So you hear that, everyone? Show's about to get better. So hang in there. Give us a thumbs up now. But show's about to get better.
Just one little piece in this. This is from the university or from the conference to Michigan. On November 8th, the university and its head football coach delivered their responses to the conference's notice. The university's response did not deny that the impermissible scheme occurred, but argued that the conference did not have the authority to enforce its own rules. For instance, the university argued that a rule authorizing the conference to impose additional penalties after an NCAA investigation based on the final results of that investigation actually prohibited the conference from enforcing an entirely different rule, the sportsmanship policy. This is when we started hearing about how the Big Ten was not happy with Michigan. I think a lot of this is just because of all of the lawyer hair that had been pulled out and put on the floor of the Big Ten meeting rooms because of the arguing back that Michigan was doing on some of these things and the way they were arguing it, and the Big Ten lawyers just shaking their heads. But there's so much stuff here. There was one thing. Chris Vanini was also pulling some of this, and here's one part of it. And I don't exactly know where this is in that letter, but this is from the Big Ten. The university's November 8 response does not deny that the impermissible scheme occurred. Instead, it offers only procedural and technical arguments designed to delay accountability. And that's just more a very this is not a happy this is not a happy Big Ten, and they're letting everybody know about it. And I'm kind of with Kevin. What they're saying is stronger than the punishment. Like, pay attention to what the Big Ten is saying about Michigan here, and the use of the word cheating. Like, if I go through this and Control F cheating and see how many times cheat is mentioned, things like that, and the impermissible, all of that. It's pretty damning. Kevin, you got anything you want to say before you get out of here? We'll let you talk.
I'm not going to read any statements because I can't open a second window at risk of dropping off of here. But again, I'm going to need to read some of this documentation. I will do that from the bar and get accused by my wife of not paying attention to her. And why did she bother taking me up to Cleveland for my birthday? And well, we're living in strange times, my friends. This is all interesting. I'm going to be curious to see what type of timeline the NC2A can move on. It's certainly not going to be days or weeks. I mean, unless, we're talking about like 30 weeks, but we'll see at this point. I think it's a pretty thin punishment at this point, as I said, and Tony said that I said, and I will say again, the words are much stronger than what the actions are at this point. I was kind of waiting to see if when the Big Ten released more information, if there was going to be some lower level things that would be included in there. Apparently not at this point. But once again, just to kind of pull the pin and walk out of the room, we're only talking about one issue right now. We're only talking about the Stallion stuff. There's a lot of other accusations out there that are not being discussed at this point. Whether or not that falls more under the NC2A purview or the FBI investigation or whatever, I don't know. I mean, we're still in the opening stanzas of this song. We're not really that deep into it yet. I'm still going to maintain that this is a relatively toothless punishment at this point, but if you're Ohio State, you got to get out there and just take care of business. Every Michigan fan in the world who's in the chat is just talking about the impending beatdown that is coming to Columbus and Ann Arbor. And all I say there is I'll be interested to see if both teams are undefeated and what that game looks like.
All right, so we are way behind on Super Chats. Kevin, thank you for hopping on. Always good to have you. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Try not to. Why don't you hand your wife your phone and just enjoy a lovely evening away from this whole mess, and we'll be here. We'll be here to well, don't worry. We'll text you tomorrow with
It'll be
we'll see
waiting.
we'll see you tomorrow. Yeah, we'll see you tomorrow.
We'll all be hanging out. Pictures of recruits. Big recruiting weekend for Ohio State. Does anybody even know who they're playing? Oh yeah, Michigan State. So we'll be ready for that come tomorrow.
Yes, it turns out there is an Ohio State football game that we'll be covering tomorrow. So we'll see Kevin there. You will see Kevin there as well. Thank you, Kevin. All right, so let's get caught up. We are way behind on Super Chats. My apologies. We're going to blast through a bunch of these to get caught up on all of that. Super Chat from WV Buckeye. Good to see everyone. See you in Columbus tomorrow. We will see you there. This has been a season where it feels like we have spent so many weeks. Like we got into a nice routine at the beginning of the week. Mm-hmm. At the beginning of the season, like, okay, on Monday we do this show, and Tuesday we do this show, Wednesday we do this show, and then the last like 3 or 4 weeks has just been like, well, I don't know, we'll just see what something happens in the Michigan thing, and then that's what we'll end up talking about, because that's all anyone wants to talk about anyway. So yeah, Ohio State plays Michigan State tomorrow. We'll get there at some point. Mm-hmm. We'll have a pregame show. We'll probably talk about it some on the pregame show. Find us at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle to watch that. And while you're on here, we just talked about how we could make Kevin's wife happy by having him not on his phone. You can make Tony's wife happy by pushing the thumbs up button. That would be much appreciated. Next up from Mike Farino, by doing day of game suspensions only. Was that potentially a move to prevent an injunction? Michigan has won 3 games with Jim surviving on a similar suspension. Undermines the irreparable irreparable harm aspect. That's a great point.
Well, and that's one of the points that the Pete Thamel, talking to that Chief Justice, that was what he said would be the conference's or the judge's argument or whatever, that what is irreparable when you've already won 3 games for being suspended. You're 3-0 when you were suspended, so I don't know that this would be irreparable. So I think that is accurate, although we don't know that an injunction isn't going to happen or that it isn't trying to happen. I do think this is Michigan upset? Sure, they didn't want anything to happen, but can they really be upset with this punishment when at this point, again, this is just the preliminary punishment. You haven't lost any games. Nothing has really been lost. So you still have everything. Nothing has been taken from you other than, 4 hours on Saturday. You're not going to have your head coach. So I wonder if this is something that they will fight, because if you do fight it, that 3-game suspension, if say you get an injunction for a day, does that 3-game suspension just carry over? Now you might be missing him for the Big Ten championship game or a bowl game, something like that. Or is this just something whatever the fight is, he seemingly is not going to be on the sideline for Ohio State. So at this point, what's to fight?
Well, and that's kind of the question is, do they fight it, or do they look at this as, kind of finding something of a middle ground, which, the old line that a good compromise leaves everyone upset. I'm guessing that Ohio State people are looking at this and going, that's not enough, I'm upset. And Michigan people are looking at this and going, that's too much, I'm also upset. I would be, this, based on Michigan's response and how, there were 17 ways in which you can't do this to me, only I can do this to me. And, and he didn't even know anything, and you can't prove anything. And even if you could prove anything, you don't have grounds to do this. And, I still sort of expect them to go and pursue this, but I do wonder if to Mike's point, the fact that they have won 3 games already without him on the sidelines and won them somewhat comfortably, even though they were against terrible competition, if that does maybe undermine the irreparable harm aspect of Michigan's argument that Pete Thamel made, had the judge explain to him in writing in his article earlier on Friday.
Can I just point out, sorry, Section 5 of the letter from the conference to the university says the JGAC and I have determined that this disciplinary action against the university is appropriate. So just to answer that question, the JGAC was involved, hence the larger than 2 games.
Yes. So, again, that also probably helps undermine the argument against, this is just one crazy guy who thinks he needs to, this is the JGAC is university executives or leaders from around the country. So, you built some consensus across the conference where you got everyone else on one side of the table and Michigan on the other. So that probably helps, you would think, in terms of making this case potentially stick. We will see if Michigan files an injunction. If there was one filed, there was a report that it would have to be addressed within 14 days, which 14 days from now, we will already be up in the Great Lakes state of Michigan, getting ready for the Ohio State-Michigan game the following day. So, oh boy, what a fascinating week that could be.
Tom, would you
Even
like
more,
Michigan's response?
I would, more than anything in the world, love Michigan's response.
So they have released a statement, and it reads as this: like all members of the Big Ten Conference, we are entitled to a fair, deliberate, and thoughtful process to determine the full set of facts before a judgment is rendered. Today's action by Commissioner Tony Petitti disregards the conference's own handbook, violates basic tenets of due process, and sets an untenable precedent of assessing penalties before an investigation has been completed. We are dismayed at the commissioner's rush to judgment when there's an ongoing NCAA investigation, one in which we are fully cooperating. Commissioner Petitti's hasty action today suggests that this is more about reacting to pressure from other conference members than a desire to apply the rules fairly and impartially. By taking this action at this hour, the commissioner is personally inserting himself onto the sidelines and altering the level playing field that he is claiming to preserve, and doing so on Veterans Day, a court holiday. To try to thwart the university from seeking immediate judicial relief is hardly a profile in impartiality. To ensure fairness in the process, we intend to seek a court order together with Coach Harbaugh, preventing this disciplinary action from taking effect.
All right, well, there you go. So a good compromise, Tony, leaves everyone upset. So, yeah, I mean, you could, I would assume they're going to be able to find a judge, like, even though it is Veterans Day. You started talking about Veterans Day, and I'm like, are they going to talk about the troops? You can't. I was so sure that was where that was headed. Yeah, I assume they're going to be judge shopping, knocking on doors. I would assume they probably already know who they're going to take this to, and that they have probably notified the person, like, hey, you might hear from us sometime. Might be weird, might be on Friday afternoon, kind of late, but yeah, the idea that this is just patently unfair, the timing of this, like, whatever. When did you want this to happen? Because after the season is not an acceptable answer. So if it happened yesterday, then the conference didn't give enough time to take your well-written legal yada yada into account. If it happens today, it's a holiday and the troops, and the courts are closed, and so it's going to be 3% harder to get this done. And if it's next Monday, then you waited too long and you let it linger over our heads for the Penn State game. So, the timing of this, whatever, man, like, there was no timing that was going to make Michigan happy on this. So, we'll see next steps at this point in terms of a legal, an emergency injunction. And you want to put odds? Go ahead and put odds on whether Jim Harbaugh is standing on the sideline in Beaver Stadium on Saturday, because I don't want to be the one who puts odds on this. I really could see anything from 5% to 80%.
Yeah, and now you know how they do the sideline interviews at the half or coming back from the half. If he's there, are you asking about your team's performance? Jim, are you happy with your team's performance given the cloud over your program right now? And do you have anything you would like to say? And of course, that nothing will be said, but I do. Michigan arguing fairness in their reply is a little like, come on. This whole thing was because of you're somebody in your program doing something to create unfairness, and so then for you to be like, this isn't fair. I mean, I guess that's an eye for an eye at that point.
Yeah, and boy, it's going to be so interesting to see where this all goes. We are still even further behind on Super Chat. Sorry, Jeff Hines. He says the punishment is you're guilty, and that is certainly the reputational damage to Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan program that has come over the last few weeks is not insubstantial. And I say that, and people are probably hearing that in terms of like Michigan attorneys saying like, this is incredible damage to the reputation. Like, you probably you probably earned what you got here. And there has not been a lot of pushback on anything other than Jim Harbaugh had direct knowledge of this, and hey, it's too soon. Those have been really the two big lines of pushback right now, which is, okay, who else knew? Did literally no one else in the building knew? Or, you know, I don't know that anything that they've pushed back on yet has been, has told me that they're going to like skate with a light punishment next year. I don't think that's probably going to be the case, but we'll see. The NCAA has missed 18-inch putts before, so we'll see where that all goes. Super chat from Mike Smith. Wait a second. So the Trust Me Bro source was wrong about what Michigan had against other schools. Who could have guessed that? Real shocker. Now, that was the idea that Michigan has this incredible vault of, reams and reams of documents of documenting every wrongdoing that every other Big Ten team has done over the last decade or whatever. That, the whole process is not over. Maybe that comes out later, but that never made a whole heck of a lot of sense to me, because if you've got all this stuff showing, hey, other teams are doing exactly what we did, which was something that has been claimed at least some places online, that feels like something you would have rolled out of that vault on about Tuesday morning this week and said that's part of the no, you can't punish us now because everyone does it. Because instead it was, well, someone called someone about a different game and it wasn't illegal, but it was kind of the same thing. Like, if you have the goods, it feels like you deliver the goods before the punishment has already been levied. The time to drop that in the conference's lap is 3 days ago, and it seemingly didn't happen. So that sort of makes me wonder what exactly is in the vault. Let's get Geraldo Rivera and find out.
No, you don't want to get him. You want to get somebody who can find something in a vault. Let's just next one, Tom. We've got to get through these.
Super chat from CW. Wonder if Ward Manuel, the Michigan AD, will now pull his seat with the playoff committee with this move by the Big Ten president. That's an interesting question.
He took this past week off. I don't know that he will, but it is interesting. The first week that they had the meeting, there was a question from, I think maybe Ralph Russo of the AP, asking the Boo Corrigan, the chair of the committee, hey, are you guys worried about having Ward Manuel on your committee tainting the committee and tainting you, basically having a guy with that kind of reputation, or at least with what's going on, and kind of getting this reputation now that he's associated obviously with Michigan. And I wouldn't expect them to push him out, or it's just a matter of what does he have time for? I think he does, because this is now either a judge is going to handle this for the time being or not, in which case, like, what has changed about Ward Manuel's situation? He's not going to be watching to make sure that Jim Harbaugh isn't on the sidelines. There's obviously the get back coach for that, or Tom, the stay away coach.
That's a tremendous idea. Get really a fun twist on an old classic in college football, the stay away coach. We have had people in various places asking about, so what happens if Jim Harbaugh just shows up? Like, I don't think this is not pro wrestling. Jim Harbaugh is not going to glass breaks and Jim Harbaugh comes striding, swaggering down the tunnel at Penn State. I mean, Tom, he's probably not, right? Yes.
Who did Jim Harbaugh have on campus this past week?
He had Ric Flair on campus, right? Was that Ric Flair?
Ric Flair, the dirtiest player in the game.
Will he say woo, Tony? Will he say woo is my question.
Probably.
I am in the process of, I think are we caught up on Super Chats? Hang on, I think we may have one more. Sorry, I'm trying to do 4 things at once here. This is what happens when Kevin is goofing off. Super Chat from Bill McMillan. Thank you very much for your Super Chat. 597 items in the live chat. I haven't looked for a while. I'm sure everyone's getting along great.
Oh, yeah.
Super chat from Mike Smith. Honestly, I do hope this stops all the questions to Ohio State coaches and players so we can focus on Ohio State instead of focusing on something else. Day said the locker room feels different. Let's get it back.
Well, I think the current stretch of games might have people looking elsewhere in terms of the excitement around college football, but a night game in Ohio Stadium against anybody, I think, is going to get people back into the swing of things. And I'm with you. I'm ready to talk about Ohio State stuff. Like we have, this is all tangentially Ohio State. We talk about Michigan years round. So this is not just something we're doing just because. This is something we do year round. We talk about Michigan because you can't talk about one without the other. You can't talk about Ohio State without acknowledging Michigan. You can't talk about Michigan without acknowledging Ohio State. It's just right now, Michigan is doing the whole, look what I can do type of thing and trying to command everybody's attention, and it's working. Now, Mark asked the most recent comment, I missed this. What did Michigan do?
Well, buddy, how much time you got?
So just check the internet.
All right. Yes, always check certain places on the internet. Be careful about where you're checking on the internet. I also tried to pull up a popular Michigan site a minute ago to check a source on something, and unsurprisingly, it did not load. Maybe having servers under stress might be the read here. I did want to pull up this. It is the let's see if I can pull this up all the way. There we go. This is from the Big Ten's letter that went out to officially notify Michigan, and this is part of the things that that Tony was talking about earlier: the extraordinary nature of the offending conduct and information obtained by the conference. And this is the Big Ten essentially making a case for, hey, yeah, it's weird for us to be doing this right now, but here's why we're doing it. And they talked to the president of the NCAA, Charlie Baker, back on October 18th. During that call, the NCAA disclosed to both the conference and the university that it had received highly credible evidence of a wide-ranging, multi-year, in-person, off-campus scouting scheme orchestrated by a non-coaching staff member of the university's football program. There were several extraordinary aspects of this call. It is rare and outside the NCAA's typical protocols for the NCAA to disclose information about an active investigation to institutions other than the institution under investigation. However, the NCAA stated and believed that the disclosure was necessary due to the unprecedented scope of the then alleged scheme. Then alleged is, you will note, past tense. And because of the significant impact on the impermissible scheme could have on competition during the current football season, it was also extraordinary that the NCAA president arranged for and participated in the call, underscoring not only the severity of the allegations, but the immediate impacts. All of these circumstances were a clear statement from the NCAA that the nature and reliability of the evidence that they had received indicated that the improper scheme related to the university's football team was ongoing and created a substantial risk of compromising the integrity of football competitions this season. That is italicized. The two words "this season" are italicized so that you put emphasis on it when you read. At that point, the university's football team had played 7 games this season and had 5 more regular season games remaining. So, what that is telling you right there is, this is not just a few Big Ten presidents who are big mad, or the Big Ten coaches who were on the conference call and they were the only ones who thought this was a big deal and are pressuring the Big Ten into that decision. That is the NCAA, including President Charlie Baker, looking at this and going like, hey, this is way bigger than the normal kind of crap that we deal with, because they deal with all that kind of stuff all the time, and it's generally dealt with poorly, and but then they it is dealt with poorly but slowly. For this to get fast tracked in this way and fast tracked to the Big Ten, that tells you there are a lot of people at the highest levels of the sport taking this very, very, very seriously. Which then when you see there was what was the phrase that the Tony Petitti used? It was the one of the most serious or one of the worst scandals in league history, and like self-evidently he was talking about on-field scandals and scandals that directly impact the on-field product. The fact that the situation was ongoing, that helps make it a bigger deal. All of that stuff makes it a bigger deal and helps maybe underscore why you've got such immediate action on this.
Yeah. Just the as you said, the immediacy of it. The super chat from Jeff Hines is kind of what we've been talking about with the biggest punishment here, is that the important headline is that the Big Ten confirms Michigan cheated. And that's something that you can't wash your hands of. That's something that is not just this year, and really until the Big Ten puts an actual timeline on it, other than calling it multiple years, people are going to attach this to the success in 2021, the success in 2022, and then, they did not need to do this advanced scouting and cheating this year with the schedule that they have. So I don't know. I don't even know if they went out from this point on. Will people give them the credit for it? Because there's still the chain of it. And never mind the fact that the NCAA may come in and wipe all of it out anyway. And so whatever you win will be taken away and will be vacated. And you'll still have the T-shirts, and you'll still have not the trophies. You'll still have the Zubaz pants and the fanny packs and things like that. But this is far from over, and now Michigan can move on. I think that's the other thing. Now we can all move on, but it doesn't sound like Michigan wants to move on just yet. They want to continue to fight this. And this is a conference that is not happy with Michigan. I think they are more unhappy with Michigan than Michigan is with them, because some of those words that they're throwing at Michigan, this is not a situation where, like, you know what, we need to remain friends. I'm going to use some kind words. Like, they are throwing it out there. And I can see now why Michigan fans would not like Tony Petitti, because it sure seems like he is anti-Michigan. But what he is he's just he's laying it out there. Like, he is giving them no bull. This is something that Jim Delaney would be writing to them, and it'd be in that same language. And that's like, I am the commissioner of the Big Ten. I am this. The JGEC has done this. The presidents, we have all, like, this is not a unilateral. This is not just Tony Petitti on his own. This is everybody from the Big Ten involved in this. This is not one guy against an entire university. This is a conference saying, hey, we caught you guys cheating.
Yeah, and the fact that it went beyond the two games and you had to get the JGEC involved, and again, the JGEC is, leaders from around the conference from other universities. So this is not just, hey, this school did this to us, or this one guy did this to us. That is leadership from across the conference. You had the phone call with the league's athletic directors. You had the phone call with the league's football coaches. Neither of those sounded like they were full of happy, shiny people who were thrilled about what had happened or viewed it as not a big deal. So, I think there's been a little bit of trying to reframe this as like, well, if you really look at it, only this one guy is doing this. It's like, well, it's not really true. Wes Best says, go blow, bye-bye, Jimmy. I mean, this is, even if the emergency injunction is not granted, he's not done coaching Michigan forever. It would be a 3-game suspension. I still think there's a halfway decent possibility he's on the sidelines on Saturday, that they get some kind of an emergency injunction, because at this point it's 4:43 on the East Coast. So you're going in and you're talking to whoever, and if you get someone to grant you the injunction, and I wouldn't even want to begin, handicapping the likelihood that happens, but if you do get that injunction granted, how long is it going to take the Big Ten to file a, whatever the counter, or have a hearing? I mean, the hearing, it happens, according to the reporting from Pete Thamel earlier on Friday, in the, Washtenaw County courthouse setting, which then there were questions about whether it would actually stay there, or whether it would get bumped up to a federal court or a district court, or, federal district court or something like that, because it's in, dealing with entities in 2 different states, and we got to get all that sorted out. But, if there was a hearing based on an emergency injunction that was granted, that had to happen within 14 days. So that's not necessarily going to be a 5 minutes later, they're all talking and arguing. You probably get to coach the Penn State game, and then you might even get to coach the Maryland game before that actually happens. I did want to go ahead.
The counter to the injunction, just so you know, it's an outjunction.
Tony Gerdeman, Esquire. So here's the next thing from the conference's statement. The conference's actions to protect the integrity of upcoming competitions. Later on October 18th, so this would be the same day that the call with Charlie Baker, the NCAA president, happened, 2 senior conference staff members and I participated in a call with the university's president, so that's Santa Ono, athletic director Ward Manuel, and general counsel. During that call, I expressed my belief that disclosure of the impermissible scheme to the university's remaining 2023 football opponents was necessary to preserve player safety and protect the integrity of those competitions. After significant discussion, and at my insistence, the conference and the university agreed that the disclosures were necessary and appropriate. Also on October 18th, the university obtained consent from the NCAA to inform its football coaching staff of the NCAA's investigation. a deviation from normal practice that was required in light of the extraordinary nature of the NCAA's description of the conduct and the in-season disclosures being provided to other conference members. That same evening, the conference informed the university's next football opponent, Michigan State University, of the information disclosed by the NCAA regarding the impermissible scheme. On October 19th, the conference similarly informed the university's remaining 2023 football opponents. The conference also consulted with U.S. Integrity, which confirmed the conference's view that immediate transparency about the information the conference had learned was important. Later that day, the conference issued a press release stating that the conference and the university had been notified by the NCAA that it was investigating allegations of improper sign stealing by the university's football program. In that press release, the conference stressed that it, quote, considers the integrity of the competition to be of the utmost importance and it would continue to monitor the NCAA's investigation. So this is a little bit of the, in journalism, it's called a TikTok. It's sort of like the, so here's the behind the scenes. Here's what we couldn't show you before. So here's, how this sort of happened behind the scenes as the whole investigation sort of came together.
I think one of the key things in there, the words were improper sign stealing. And throughout much of this, sign stealing is legal. That's why there's the improper sign stealing listed in there. Just one little needle point to Michigan on that one.
All right, I'm kind of scrolling through this document. If you want to email me the link to the Michigan statement, I will pull that up because I do want to read that again because that was pretty significant. I'm going to punch up the live chat just to see where everything's going. Hey, it's going great. Turns out everyone agrees. So
don't look at it.
So it's fine. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, this is a. And this is an interesting point that Brad Smith is making. I don't think it is former Mizzou quarterback Brad Smith, but it could be. The 2012 Ohio State team was undefeated and couldn't play for the national championship. What about, quote, the kids talk then? Because that is it's unfair that Michigan could have their season impacted. And look, they're having such a great season. So, it would be really unfair to have them have their season impacted by this. And, that's the 2012 team really did not benefit in any way from the stuff that happened that led to the firing of Jim, I guess technically the resignation of Jim Tressel, but that whole thing, and then Urban Meyer coming in, and the 2011 team going to a bowl game, and then the 2012 team, which had largely nothing to do with it. I think there was actually no overlap between the people, the Tat 5 and the 2012 team, if I remember correctly. I don't think so. But either way, it's...
Those were all 2008 recruits, so no.
That's what I thought, yeah. So, I mean, a lot has changed on the views since then, but I certainly understand why, not only from a 2012 perspective, but also from a 2021 and 2022 Ohio State perspective, I understand why that argument certainly does not find a particularly sympathetic audience in Columbus. Butch Jones, speaking of great college football names, Butch Jones, do you guys foresee 2 seasons of vacated wins on the horizon? I would be very happy with that. I mean, and that would be part of the NCAA case. That's not something the Big Ten can do. So that would be part of the NCAA case coming based on the language that we're seeing here from the Big Ten, that we're talking about significant there's a lot of words here, that essentially that the a lot of stuff that created created a substantial risk of compromising the integrity of football competitions. They're talking about the fact they had to act this season because it created a substantial risk of compromising the integrity of football competitions. So if you're going to talk that way about 2023, then obviously you feel that it compromised football competitions in previous seasons, which then would certainly lead you to believe you're talking about vacating wins, vacating Big Ten championships, all that kind of stuff for 2021, 2022. I mean, if that's the way the Big Ten's talking about it now, and that was like the immediate reaction, it doesn't seem like the Big Ten is like, yeah, it turns out this wasn't a big deal because we're having this conversation right now. So I would be pretty surprised if you didn't see 2021 and 2022 and, maybe even 2023 vacated.
Yeah, that's my expectation. And again, that's why we need to see how far back this goes. I know the initial reports for Pete Thamel have it going back to 2021. The Stallions has been on the staff since, in some form or fashion, since 2015. But when did this really begin? And so I'm thinking if it starts wherever they just determined that the sign stealing, the illegal, improper sign stealing began, that's when the vacating will begin. So I'm expecting 2021, 2022, and the first 7 games of the 2023 season to be wiped, and maybe you'll see the first 5 and 7. It would just be. I'm trying to think what Michigan's record would be if they go ahead and win out this year. It would just be 5-0 in regular season. Is that how that would work? If it's just vacated, there are no losses there. So
Yeah, I mean, if it's just from, when do you do it? Is it from the moment that the stuff got that Stallions left the team? Is it from some moment after that? I mean, because you will certainly have people arguing that the impact probably reached beyond, Michigan State found out on a Thursday, and sure, they could have adjusted their signs or their play calling or whatever to deal with the fact that they knew that this was coming, but you still, I mean, realistically, that's not something you can change overnight. And because that came out on Thursday that week, Wednesday, Thursday that week, that's not a lot of time to make wholesale changes there. Now, would that have changed the outcome of that game? Did that make a 49-point difference? I would say probably not, but that's also, it doesn't have to make that big of a difference. If it had an impact, then it seems like that would certainly be something you could argue should be vacated as well.
And we've seen for decades, if you use an ineligible player, that game is vacated. And it doesn't matter whether that player scored 3 touchdowns or fumbled twice. If you use an ineligible player, then that game is basically going to be vacated.
Mm-hmm. I am putting together a graphic with the Michigan response right now, which is taken directly from a couple squares from Nicole Auerbach's Twitter account. So this is going to be formatted differently than all the other things. My apologies, my sincere apologies for the formatting and everything else about this show, but here we are. I'm going to punch that up in just a second. This is why Kevin needs to be here. This is what Kevin does. We've all been wondering for so long, what does Kevin do around here? It turns out he does this kind of stuff. But we'll punch that up in a second, because this is a notable response. This is not a nothing response from Michigan. Mm-hmm. There is promises of further action from Michigan here. Like all members of the Big Ten Conference, we are entitled to a fair, deliberate, and thoughtful process to determine the full set of facts before a judgment is rendered. Today's action by Commissioner Tony Petitti disregards the conference's own handbook, violates basic tenets of due process, and sets an untenable precedent of assessing penalties before an investigation has been completed. We are dismayed at the Commissioner's rush to judgment when there is an ongoing NCAA investigation, one in which we are fully cooperating. Commissioner Petitti's hasty action today suggests that this is more about reacting to pressure from other conference members than a desire to apply the rules fairly and impartially. By taking this action at this hour, the commissioner is personally inserting himself onto the sidelines and altering the level playing field he is claiming to preserve, and doing so on Veterans Day, a court holiday, to try to thwart the university from seeking immediate judicial relief is hardly a profile in impartiality. To ensure fairness in the process, we intend to seek a court order together with Coach Harbaugh, preventing this disciplinary action from taking effect. So there you go. That is the statement from Michigan as reported by Nicole Auerbach. So that's pretty strong. I don't, it's a whole due process argument, and I don't know. There's no question whether there was wrongdoing. And there's no question that under NCAA rules, Jim Harbaugh is responsible for it. Now, Michigan, in their legal response to the thing, said, well, that's NCAA rules. That's not Big Ten rules. It doesn't specifically say that in Big Ten rules. But, I think depending on who is signing your checks, you will find that either a persuasive argument or not a persuasive argument if you were an attorney. But, I don't... there's not a question whether this happened or not. There's a, it's so I don't know how much relief they're going to get from a judge. I mean, and this is one of these great unknowable things until we actually find out, okay, who did they talk to and what did they say?
One comment here from Certified Clapaholic. There 100% is question of wrongdoing. I don't think the conference has any question that Michigan did some wrongdoing, that there's wrongdoing in the program. Now, they have not tied any of that to Jim Harbaugh, but the NCAA will come in and say it doesn't matter. He should have known. And now some of that will be, here's the other thing, Tom. The rule that the head coach should know is recent. So at what point does that get applied? And can they grandfather that into stuff that was going on 2 years ago as opposed to stuff that was only going on this year? So that may actually save the previous 2 years. But we'll see. Super chat from Drew Smith. Harbaugh officially has more suspensions than bowl wins. I will say he won a bowl game at Stanford, though I'm wondering if he was already gone for that. So did he already leave for San Francisco at that point? That was 2010. It was his last team. Won the Orange Bowl, ranked 4th in the nation. Got a win there. Of course, the only bowl win for Harbaugh at Michigan was in 2015, the Citrus Bowl against Florida or South Carolina, something like that. I don't know that it really matters.
He is listed as the head coach. I'm citing Wikipedia here because this is the kind of extremely important thing. Yeah, the extremely important thing I can like David Shaw is not listed as an interim coach on there. So I'm going to guess, especially because he went to the 49ers, generally those hires are made after the NFL season ends, which happens after the college football season ends. You have Black Monday where everyone gets fired at the end of the NFL season. So I would guess he probably coached that. So yes, he has more suspensions than wins, bowl wins at Michigan, at least, is an accurate statement there. Do we need to start wrapping up?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Yeah,
and it's unfortunate.
I think we've kind of hit the big developments, and if there are more developments, and boy howdy, are we expecting more developments on this at some point? We'll probably hop back on at some point. There is high school football going on tonight that is also on the editorial calendar. So we have people headed into various spots. So this is not great timing. And really, Tony Petiti should have taken that into account as well.
I would agree with that. I do agree with, I don't know if it's haste and not waiting until Monday or lack of haste and not doing it yesterday. Yesterday would have been much better. We all had more free schedules, but I guess that will do it. Want to thank you all. If you haven't yet, go ahead and hit the like on this video. Before you leave, I know you're trying to leave right now. Also find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Join us, become a member there. Say hello to us there on the message board, which I'm sure is hopping right now, just as this chat is. Not just like this chat, but hopping. So that will do it from here. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.